2 short mechanical clicks. That's all that stood between a triumphant takeoff and a fiery inferno. In the skies over Ahmedabad, a horrified Captain Sumit Sabharwal screams at his first officer, "Why did you shut them down?" But the first officer's hands were nowhere near the controls. Down below, students at BJ Medical College are completely unaware that death is plummeting towards them. Inside the cockpit, the impossible is happening. So who really killed the engines of a perfectly sound airliner? And why, out of 242 people on board, did only the passenger in row 11 survive? The truth is more terrifying than the disaster itself. Beneath the pristine white fuselage of this Dreamliner lies a history filled with invisible scars. On the tarmac sits a Boeing 787-8, registration number VTANB. 11 years in the sky. For a modern aircraft, this is the prime of its life, an age when a machine has proven its reliability, but is still far from retirement. The sun glints off its curved wings, and the passengers at the gate see only a gleaming airliner, ready for its journey. They don't know that this particular aircraft has a complicated personality. Metal and composites have a memory, and this machine remembers every one of its critical failures. Let's go back to 2014. The plane is at flight level 410, an altitude of 12.5 kilometers, with an outside temperature of -50 degrees. The cockpit is a scene of routine, but suddenly, the silence is shattered by a sharp crack. The windshield, the only barrier between the crew and the deadly cold of the stratosphere, is suddenly covered in a thick spiderweb of cracks. The pilots stare through this fractured glass pattern, knowing the structural integrity is hanging by a thread. That time, the glass held. But the entry in the technical log becomes the first warning sign. 8 years pass, and the threat takes on a new form. This time, it's not cold, but heat. The year is 2022. In a technical bay, off limits to mere mortals, insulation begins to melt. The P100 power distribution panel, the aircraft's electrical heart, bursts into flames. The fire devours the wiring, the smell of burning plastic seeping through the bulkheads. Technicians are forced to completely cut out the burnt-out unit and replace the entire electrical panel. They clean away the soot, check the contacts, and believe the problem is solved for good. Now, just 3 months before this flight, the aircraft gets a new lease on life. Mechanics install brand new Gen X 1B70 engines under the wings. The massive titanium turbine blades look flawless. Engineers run final tests, cycling the systems through all modes, and nod in satisfaction. On paper, this is a perfectly serviceable machine. The technical log is clean, the stamps are in place, and the crew accepts the aircraft with complete confidence in its reliability. But even the most powerful titanium blades are useless without a living, steady pulse inside the cockpit. In the left seat is the captain, Sumit Sabharwal. He is 56 years old. This isn't just a pilot. He's an aviation veteran with a colossal amount of experience, over 15,000 hours in the sky. Think about that. It's nearly 2 full years of his life spent off the ground. Sabharwal operates with the kind of automatic confidence that can't be faked. However, his thoughts are already on a different kind of horizon. The captain is planning to wrap up his long flying career very soon. For him, this flight is one of the final chords before he trades the roar of turbines for the quiet of his home, forever. To his right is the first officer, 32-year-old Clive Kunder. Today, he's the PF, or pilot flying. His hands are on the controls, feeling every movement of the multi-ton machine. If the captain represents experience in the past, Kunder is looking far into the future. He's in the brightest period of his life. His wedding is just 2 months away. For him, this flight is just another step toward a happy future. At the Ahmedabad airport, this duo goes through the standard pre-flight ritual. Dry numbers from weather reports, signatures on documents, a short briefing. Psychological and medical evaluations show both pilots are in a perfectly normal, stable condition. No shadows of anxiety, no signs of stress. Their actions are a picture of cool professionalism. Sabharwal and Kunder read through the checklist, their voices clear, following strict protocols. They have complete trust in each other and in the machine. The armored cockpit door is securely locked, cutting them off from the cabin and creating an illusion of total safety and complete control. The superheated air shimmers over the runway, distorting the horizon and turning the gray concrete into a wavering mirage. The time is 13:39 local, and the heat has climbed to 28 degrees. Inside the cool, pressurized capsule of the cabin, 242 people check their seatbelts, preparing for the journey. Passengers gaze out the windows at the familiar bustle of the airport, never suspecting that for this aircraft, a routine flight is about to become a trial by fire. The control tower breaks the radio silence with a short, crisp command, officially clearing them for takeoff from runway 23. First Officer Kunder, whose thoughts were just moments ago on his upcoming wedding, now becomes an extension of the machine. His hand moves the thrust levers forward, smoothly but firmly, unleashing a colossal amount of power. The turbines respond with a low, building roar that presses everyone back into their soft seats. The plane begins its rapid acceleration, devouring the meters of white runway markings. The speed builds like an avalanche, and the landscape outside the window blurs into a single smeared line. At 08:08:35 Coordinated Universal Time, the flight computer registers a critical milestone. The call-out sounds, V1. The airspeed indicator shows 155 knots. This is the infamous point of no return. From this second on, braking is physically impossible. The airliner simply won't have enough runway left. Even if a system fails, the pilots are committed to getting the machine into the air. The crew has no choice. 4 seconds later, at precisely 08:08:39, the Boeing's nose lifts. The landing gear leaves the ground, and the heavy airliner finally defeats gravity. At this exact moment, a tiny but vital click occurs within the aircraft's complex systems. The weight-on-wheels sensors disengage, sending a signal to the plane's electronic brain, changing its status to in-air mode. The flight computer instantly reconfigures all control algorithms for flight conditions. The Dreamliner climbs into the sky, smoothly and confidently, leaving the sweltering city below, and so far, not a single light on the instrument panel hints at trouble. Just 3 seconds separate the triumph of a successful takeoff from the beginning of an inexplicable anomaly. The airliner is hanging over the ground at a frighteningly low altitude, less than 60 meters. That's lower than the rooftops of many office buildings in a major city. The speed reaches 180 knots. The nose is pointed confidently toward the zenith, and the multi-ton machine is clawing its way into the hot sky with a powerful roar. In the cabin, passengers feel the pleasant G-force pressing them into their seats, believing the most dangerous part of the flight is already over. The crew is focused on their instruments, monitoring the perfect trajectory. But at precisely 08:08:42, in the sterile and calm space of the cockpit, an event occurs that defies all laws of logic and safety. On the center pedestal, directly under the captain's right hand, is a row of critical switches. Suddenly, without any command, and with no one touching it, the fuel control switch for the left engine comes to life. With a loud, dry, mechanical click, it snaps from the run position to the full cut-off position. It's like a kill shot to the aircraft's systems. The fuel valves slam shut, completely severing a vital artery. The massive GEnx engine, which a second ago was gulping down tons of air and producing immense thrust, immediately begins to die. The flame in the combustion chambers, starved of kerosene, is extinguished. The RPM of the heavy compressor rapidly drops, and it begins to spin uselessly on inertia. Instead of the powerful synchronized roar of 2 turbines, the aircraft suddenly feels a treacherous, unnatural void on its left side. The thrust has vanished at the very moment it's needed most, during the fierce battle with gravity just above the ground. The pilots haven't even had time to shift their gaze to the center console, but the physics of flight are already working against them. It takes only 1 more second for a single failure to become a total nightmare. The time is 08:08:43. The crew hasn't yet processed the loss of thrust on the left when a mirror image of the scenario plays out on the right, The fuel switch for the second engine snaps back to cut off with the same dry click. And here's a detail that sends a chill down the spine of any safety expert. These are not touch-sensitive buttons you can accidentally brush with a sleeve or a tablet. Boeing's engineers designed them with a robust mechanical safeguard. To shut off the fuel, you have to grip the lever, pull it up against a spring-loaded lock, and only then move it back into its slot. It's a deliberate two-step motion requiring precise motor skills. But right now, some invisible force is performing this trick twice in a row. Both of the Dreamliner's engines, which had been operating at maximum takeoff power, are instantly choked off. The kerosene supply is severed, and the titanium hearts of the machine fall silent. A thick, unnatural silence descends on the cockpit. The familiar vibration is gone, as is the powerful roar that guarantees life on takeoff. The only sound is the whistle of air streaming over the nose cone. The massive airliner has instantly lost its essence. It's no longer an aircraft capable of climbing. It's now an overloaded, clumsy glider, weighing hundreds of tons, coasting forward on sheer momentum. And directly beneath the silent machine's belly, just tens of meters below, are the rooftops of residential neighborhoods, whose inhabitants have no idea that a shadow with the weight of a freight train is passing over them. Darkness engulfs the cockpit instantly, as if someone yanked the main power cord from the wall. With the turbines dead, the generators that feed the Dreamliner's power-hungry glass cockpit also die. The instrument panels flicker and die, plunging the cockpit into near darkness. The aircraft's flight control system senses the total loss of power and, in a last-ditch effort, plays its final card. The ram air turbine, or RAT, automatically deploys from the fuselage into the rushing wind, a small propeller, like a tiny windmill. It's the only hope of restoring any power at all. But physics is unforgiving. It takes between 7 and 10 seconds for the rushing air to spin the turbine's blades fast enough to generate power. For a falling aircraft, those 10 seconds are an eternity. An eternity where the pilots are flying almost completely blind. A human scream cuts through the howling wind and the blare of alarms. Captain Sabharwal glances at the fuel levers, now in the cutoff position, and can't believe his eyes. Adrenaline pushes his voice to a near shriek. He turns to his first officer, shouting, "Why did you cut off?" There's no protocol in that question, just raw, animal terror and an accusation of insanity. But the first officer, Kunda, is just as stunned. His hands are on the yoke. He hasn't touched a thing. He snaps back instantly. "I did not do so." The cockpit voice recorder impassively captures this short exchange, one that investigators across the globe would later dissect. But right now, in this moment, words are meaningless. Both pilots are hit with one terrifying realization. They are hanging at a critically low altitude, with no thrust, without full navigation, and the ground is rushing up to meet them. The plane is no longer a winged machine. It's a heavy, unpowered projectile, coasting upwards against the laws of physics. With every fraction of a second, speed bleeds away, traded for precious feet of altitude. The liner is still climbing, but it's an illusion, a climb fueled only by the momentum gained on the runway. It takes 10 endless seconds for the crew to fight through the shock and try to fix this fatal error. At precisely 08:08:52, the pilot's hands scramble for the center console. They grab the treacherous levers and, with desperate force, slam them back, moving the switches from cut off to run. They're hoping fuel will flood back into the engines, that the turbines will roar back to life. But aviation doesn't forgive a pause like this. Their altitude is less than 500 feet, a mere 150 meters above the ground. To restart the massive GEnx engines, they need a powerful assist from the airflow to spin the compressor up to speed. It's called windmilling. But right now, the airliner simply doesn't have enough airspeed for the oncoming wind to turn the heavy titanium shafts. The engines are turning too slowly, too lazily, and the automation won't even attempt an ignition to prevent an internal explosion. A restart at this altitude and speed is technically impossible. The computer sees the thrust levers pushed all the way forward, demanding takeoff power, but the hardware physically can't respond. The airliner hangs at the apex of its trajectory, ready to fall. Gravity has won the fight, pulling the multi-ton machine into an uncontrolled descent. The needle on the airspeed indicator crawls relentlessly downward, and the wings, starved of a dense flow of air, can no longer support the liner's weight. Lift dissolves like a mirage. At 080905, a short phrase, tight with tension, cuts through the radio static. Mayday, Mayday. It's not just a distress call. It's a cry of despair that air traffic controllers hear, but they are powerless to help. This entire aerial drama is compressed into a terrifyingly short time frame. The aircraft is over this area for just 32 seconds. It's nothing. Not enough time to open an emergency manual, discuss a plan, or find a safe clearing. The crew is robbed of any chance to make a decision. Instead of the horizon, the pilots are faced with a detailed panorama of the city. There are no soft fields or wide rivers for a water landing. Beneath the belly of the falling Boeing is a dense labyrinth of concrete and glass. The descent path becomes a deadly vector, pointing to one specific target. The liner is hurtling directly toward the sprawling BJ Medical College campus. Down below, hundreds of students, doctors, and patients are going about their day in total silence because the plane's engines are dead. They can't hear the threat approaching from the sky. The shadow of the wide fuselage sweeps rapidly over the academic buildings, while in the cockpit, the pilots, gripping the yokes until their knuckles are white, try to do the impossible, to overcome the inertia of a falling skyscraper. The silence is shattered not by a scream, but by a monstrous roar of tearing metal and concrete. At exactly 080911, the clock stops. The tail section of the airliner, like a giant hammer, smashes into a building of the medical college. Walls crumple like cardboard sets, unable to withstand the impact of the multi-ton structure. The fuselage breaks apart under the G-forces, splitting with a sickening screech, but its momentum is relentless. The main section of the aircraft, still carrying the heavy wings, continues on its deadly arc and crashes directly into the student dormitory. In that same instant, a firestorm engulfs the entire campus. Tons of jet fuel, filled to the brim for a long-haul flight, ignite in a flash, turning the ruins into a blazing inferno. But this is where a hidden, insidious threat of modern aviation comes into play. The Dreamliner's skin isn't made of traditional aluminum, but of advanced composite materials, carbon fiber. When it burns, this material of the future behaves differently. It releases an incredibly thick, acrid, and toxic smoke, saturated with dangerous microparticles. The air around the crash site becomes poison in a matter of moments, drastically reducing the chances of survival for anyone who might have miraculously survived the initial impact. For the people on the ground, this ordinary sunny morning becomes their last. 19 people, students and college staff, die beneath the burning rubble of the dormitory and the academic building. They had simply come to their lectures and their jobs, never knowing the sky above had already sealed their fate, with nowhere to run from the falling airliner. Amidst the raging fire and twisted metal, fate chooses a single person. The horrific impact with the ground rips the fuselage to pieces. The airliner's airframe, unable to withstand the extreme forces, snaps like a dry twig, right at the 11th row of seats. This random fracture line instantly becomes the border between certain death and a ghost of a chance at life. In seat 11A, right by the window, sits a passenger named Vishwaskumar Ramesh. He's deafened by the roar, his body aches from the impact, but his eyes lock onto the most important thing. Right in front of him, where the cabin wall was just a second ago, there is now a gaping hole. Daylight cuts through the dust and screeching metal. It's a classic ticking clock. Ramesh knows. He has to run now. On pure instinct and adrenaline, he unbuckles his seatbelt and squeezes through the opening. He tumbles outside, crawling away from the wreckage just moments before the firestorm completely consumes the cabin. But the joy of his miraculous escape is immediately replaced by despair. Vishwaskumar looks at the burning skeleton of the plane, knowing the terrible truth. In there, just a few rows back, his own brother remains. A wall of fire cuts off any chance of helping, of going back. When the wail of sirens fills the air and rescuers begin to search the smoking ruins, they are met with brutal statistics. Teams in protective suits search the ashes, meter by meter, hoping to find someone else, but they only recover bodies. 241 dead. Vishwaskumar Ramesh is the sole survivor out of 242 people on board. He stands alone in the chaos, a living witness to how a matter of inches in the cabin determined who was destined to go home and who would remain here forever. Among the ash and debris, rescuers find 2 orange boxes, blackened by the heat. These armored containers are the only witnesses that can tell the truth, but they are silent. The impact with the concrete and the subsequent firestorm have critically damaged the recorders. In a lab, Indian specialists anxiously examine the melted circuit boards. They know that any mistake during recovery will destroy the information forever. The risk is too great, and the local experts admit they are out of their depth. An urgent decision is made. The evidence is sent across the ocean, to Washington, to the headquarters of the NTSB. American engineers, armed with the world's best technology, perform a kind of digital CPR. In the sterile silence of the lab, they manage to work a miracle, extracting the telemetry from the flight's final minutes. When the graphs appear on the monitors, the investigators are stunned. The data from the flight data recorder, the FDR, shatters the theory of a software glitch. The instruments didn't just record an electrical signal, they recorded the physical movement of mechanical parts. The sensors clearly show that the levers in the cockpit did, in fact, change position. First, the left switch clicks down. Exactly 1 second later, no more, no less, the right one follows. This rhythmic 1-second interval looks frighteningly deliberate. The experts immediately search for signs of a struggle or a break-in. They listen to the audio recordings, scan the parameters of the cockpit door. But there's nothing. No terrorists, no extraneous sounds, no signs of external interference. The plane didn't crash because of a bomb or a hijacking. The picture that emerges is a paradox. The pilots swear they never touched the levers, but the plane's mechanical brain says otherwise, registering a fatal hand movement that, according to the crew, never happened. The investigators look at the graphs and see not a technical failure, but the clear, confident signature of a human hand. That steady, 1-second interval between the cutoffs becomes the investigation's central clue. Electricity doesn't work like that. A short circuit hits instantly or sparks chaotically. But here, we see a clear, measured rhythm. Tick, tock. It's the natural motor function of a living being. A hand clicks the left switch, shifts its effort, and exactly 1 second later, clicks the right. Experts are adamant. It's physically impossible to accidentally hit these switches. A mechanical guard, requiring an up and back motion, is designed specifically to prevent any kind of accidental flip. It takes deliberate effort. You can't do it by, say, just dropping a tablet onto the console. The Commission proposes what is perhaps the most damaging theory of all: pilot error. The logic behind the accusation is simple and brutal. In the stress of a climb-out, with attention split between instruments, airspeed, and the controller, the human brain can sometimes falter. Investigators paint a picture where a pilot's hand reaches for, say, the landing gear lever, but in a state of tunnel vision, grabs the fuel levers instead. Aviation history is filled with tragedies where crews mixed up buttons or shut down perfectly good engines. It seems like the pieces fit. But the pilot's colossal experience screams against this theory of fatal clumsiness. 15,000 hours in the sky. Sabharwal knew this cockpit by pure muscle memory. For him to mistake the fuel cutoff for something else, that would be like a seasoned surgeon mixing up a scalpel and a clamp. And then there's the ultimate alibi: their voices. The black box doesn't lie. In the pilot's reactions, there's no sign of them realizing a mistake. There's no, "Oh my God, what did I just do?" What you hear is the genuine, primal shock of professionals watching their machine kill itself, with no idea why. The psychological profile and the audio recording completely shatter the prosecution's tidy theory. But what if the hands that shut down those engines weren't made of flesh and blood, but of pure electricity? The defense and independent technical experts put forward a chilling theory: a latent defect. They forced the investigation to look back to this specific Boeing's medical history. We remember this plane had been on fire before. That very same fire in the P-100 power distribution panel could have left behind an invisible but lethal scar. Microscopic damage to some wiring insulation, something the mechanics had missed. The disaster scenario looks like this. The plane is on its takeoff roll, the airframe shaking with powerful vibrations from the acceleration and the landing gear. Deep in the avionics bay, somewhere in the dense bundles of wires, two contacts touch for just a millisecond. And a phantom is born. A stray electrical signal, a ghost command that no human ever gave, surges through the flight control system. This signal zaps the fuel cutoff solenoids. These are powerful electromagnets, capable of physically moving mechanical parts. They are what forcefully yank the heavy levers, bypassing the mechanical guards like an invisible hand. And that mysterious 1-second delay suddenly has a logical, technical explanation. It's not a human pause for thought. It's the travel time for that rogue current to cascade through the circuits from the left side of the aircraft to the right. In the cockpit, a scene worthy of a supernatural thriller unfolds. A ghost in the machine takes control. The levers on the center console slam down on their own, with a loud, dry crack, obeying the will of a short circuit. The crew are just spectators, watching as rogue automation physically shuts down their perfectly healthy airplane. 260 lives are extinguished in an instant, as a fiery storm engulfs the ruins of the college. The grim statistics of the tragedy are stark. 241 people remain inside the molten aluminum capsule, while another 19 students and faculty die on the ground, simply for being in the giant's path. But the first wave of shock and grief quickly transforms into a cold, calculated legal fury. The victims' relatives, having lost their loved ones in this inferno, unite into a powerful single front, filing a multi-million-dollar class-action lawsuit against the aerospace giant, Boeing. Their main weapon in court becomes that very theory of a latent defect, the story of a phantom electrical pulse that killed a perfectly good airliner. The fight for the truth moves from the smoldering ruins into air-conditioned boardrooms, where a fierce war breaks out over what seem like simple words. In the preliminary report, investigators carefully use the verb, "the switches moved." The word sounds neutral, allowing for vibration or accident. But the international pilot community erupts in outrage. Pilots demand it be changed to the rigid phrase, "were moved." The difference is colossal and legally critical. Moved leaves the door open for crew negligence. Were moved points to a specific external force, whether it was a human hand or the powerful throw of a rogue solenoid. Captain Sabharwal's colleagues fight for every word in the report, refusing to believe the veteran could have destroyed his own aircraft and crew. The true cause of that fateful double click leaves the world of engineering and becomes suspended in the air, a subject of endless legal debate, where the price of a single word is measured in millions of dollars, and the reputation of an entire industry.